One example of the reality of angelic beings at work in human life without the recognition of their presence is the story of Balaam. Now again, obviously, if you don't believe that the Bible is true, you're not going to believe this, and okay, fine. But if you come to this course with a belief that what the Bible presents is accurate depictions of reality, then Balaam's donkey has a very important message for you. And so the example here of a prophet named Balaam, whose story is found in Numbers chapter 22 and 23, is more than just a story about how a donkey talked to a guy one time. Now, I'm not going to read the entire passage. I would encourage you to take the time to read it on your own. But here is the general gist of the story of Balaam. So Balaam's a prophet. And the king of Moab sends some emissaries to Balaam to try and get Balaam to come to Moab to curse the Israelites. At first, Balaam is not going to do that, but eventually he decides to go to the king. Not necessarily to curse Israel, but he's going to finally go to the king. And the way he goes about it upsets the Lord. And so God sends an angel to stand in Balaam's way. Here's Balaam on his donkey riding to Moab. And all of a sudden his donkey starts acting funny. In one case, he tries to go off the road to get away from the angel that is standing in his path. Right? Balaam doesn't see the angel. The donkey sees the angel, realizes that there's an angel there, tries to go off the path. Balaam whips the donkey. Right? There's another place where the donkey, they're going through. It is very tight space, and there's the angel again. Balaam's donkey tries to get around it, but it's very close quarters, scrapes, ends up scraping Balaam's foot against the wall. Balaam's upset at that, beats the donkey again, and then they go a little further. The angel is again in their way, and finally the donkey just lies down. And Balaam is beating his donkey, just because it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, when all of a sudden the donkey starts talking to him. Now, it is a very humorous situation here when the donkey starts talking, because Balaam starts talking to the donkey like a talking donkey is a normal occurrence, right? So the donkey says, well, why are you beating me? And instead of Balaam being shocked that there's a talking donkey, he's like, well, you did such and such and such and such. You're talking to a donkey. It's only then that Balaam is allowed to see the angel of the Lord. So this angel has been standing in front of Balaam several times, and Balaam has no idea it's happening. All he knows is his donkey is acting strange. And the angel goes on to say that had the donkey not, done all these things to try and avoid him, that the angel was going to kill Balaam. And Balaam would have never known that the angel was there. So what we have here is a case of, here was something unseen that was really real. Right? It was going to have, and it did have, a significant impact on Balaam's life, even though Balaam had no idea what was going on. Another example, this time from 1 Kings. 1 Kings, Ahab, the evil king of Israel, has made an alliance with Jehoshaphat, king of Judah for them to go to war against Syria. But before Jehoshaphat is willing to completely, go all in, he wants to hear from a prophet of the Lord. Now, Ahab is a follower of Baal and, doesn't really follow the Lord that often. So he brings in all these prophets who start telling Jehoshaphat and Ahab, go up, you're going to be victorious, go up, be victorious. Jehoshaphat, of course, knows that these are not true prophets of the Lord, and so he said, is there no prophet of the Lord that we can inquire from, right? So Jehoshaphat, fairly good king in Judah, so he wants to make sure that his engagement in battle with Ahab is, going to be acceptable to the Lord. So Ahab says, yeah, there's one guy, but I don't like him because he never says anything good about me. Now Jehoshaphat says, no, we need to hear from him. So Micaiah, prophet of God, is brought in. And on his way to the king, he is told by some other people, this is what all the prophets are saying. And Micaiah's response is, well, I can only tell them what God will allow me to say. So Micaiah gets into the throne room there, and Ahab explains the situation and says, should we go to battle? And Micaiah says, go up, you're going to be successful. Now this is the exact same thing all of the other prophets have been saying. All the false prophets have been saying this exact same thing. But Ahab knows. And so he says to Micaiah, how many times have I told you that you need to tell me the truth? Even though all the other prophets have been saying this exact thing, he knows it's false. And so to hear it from Micaiah, he knows Micaiah is not telling him the truth. So Micaiah says, fine. What I've seen is Israel scattered like sheep without a shepherd. And their master is gone. Essentially saying, you're going to die. If you go up, you're going to die. And Ahab says to Jehoshaphat, didn't I tell you he never says anything good about me? All right, so Ahab knows, that the Lord is not blessing this situation. Now, that sets the stage for a very interesting prophecy by Micaiah. Micaiah says, verse 19 is 1 Kings 22, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing beside him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who will entice Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth-Gilead? One said one thing, another said another. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord, saying, I will entice him. And the Lord said to him, by what means? And he said, I will go out, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you are to entice him, and you shall succeed. Go out and do so. Now, therefore, behold, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these your prophets. The Lord has declared disaster for you. So here is Ahab, who is being told that what is taking place in these prophets that are prophesying, go up to Ramoth-Gilead, has actually been determined in a spiritual realm with God and his heavenly hosts. And that spirit that was going to be successful is working through those prophets to lie to Ahab about what to do. Another example of this is 2 Kings chapter 6. In this case, story of Elisha. Elisha's servant goes out, sees this large army has encamped around the city of Dothan because Elisha has been telling the Israelite king how to avoid the Syrians. And so Elisha's servant goes out one day, sees the army, and is terrified and says to Elisha, what are we going to do? And Elisha says, there are more with us than there are with them, and allows him and prays to God that he would be allowed to see God's presence. And there's an angelic army, right, that is much greater and is surrounding that army from the Syrians. Again, the servant couldn't see that, but it was really there. Only he's able to see it once his eyes are opened by God. 2 Kings 19, verse 35, we have the case of the Assyrian army being destroyed by God, by an angel of God. 185,000 soldiers killed in one night by one angel. And so what we see from the biblical record is that there is a host of spiritual beings that are active in the world around us who we do not see, but are nonetheless real.